This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
Welcome to Loose on the Lead. Seth Merrill from EquiDaily.com. Steve Bick from Sirius and XM's At the Races. Steve Bick coming in casual today because, as you noted, up in your neck of the woods, although it was just as cold as in my neck of the woods, too.
This is my Admiral Perry look, cultivated by the wife, a Hanukkah present.
I like that.
Thank you.
There you go.
I love it. It's from the Emerald Isle, from Ireland.
Yeah.
It's an Irish sweater.
Very good. Good look today. And again, it was nippy out there. I went out and made sure my car would start. And then once I started it, I just left it running. So by the time I got ready to drive in, it was like 80 degrees in the car.
You know what you can always do? You can take some of the clothing from the back seat and you can lay it over the engine block at night. And that'll keep the engine block warm. How about that?
I like that. Yeah, that's a good thing. And that's kind of why I have it in there. Just as an emergency kind of thing, speaking of that.
If the car ever breaks down in a blizzard, you can pile yourself underneath the 73 ties in the back seat.
He was under a bunch of ties when he died. Racing news from the past week. The big news from the past week, of course, was the Eclipse finalists were announced, and we talked about them last week. We went through our ballots. I guess vis-a-vis my ballot, the one surprise for me was that Dortmund didn't get included in the 2-year-old male category. It was American Pharoah, Hootenanny, and Texas Red. Hootenanny was the kind of the clever.
Those are the three that I went with, I think.
Well, I was going to give you credit because I thought Hootenanny was kind of a clever pick. So good call there. Dortmund, I do think Dortmund got hurt though by not being in the book. I don't know.
Oh, always. And that is one of the issues with the way they send out. And for those of you that haven't ever seen, it's a little printed catalog from about mid-December. So it's if you aren't looking ahead, or if you aren't considering charts and other information, one thing that I do is I'll go to DRF has got the best buyers for the year, and I'll go through those best buyers, and you'll find horses that may not have won a graded stake or didn't win a grade 1, and they're kept out of the catalog, and it's really not fair, and it's inappropriate.
Yeah, and they do update online. So Dortmund made the online after he won the futurity, but I found it surprising to make the book because he was the top single pick in the future pool. So that was maybe a little bit surprising. And as I said, I think that might have hurt him. Horse of the year, no surprise with the three there: Bayern, California Chrome, and Main Sequence. And I've been putting up some of the ballots from the pundits that have published theirs online. I'm going to be interested to see how that horse of the year shakes out. Actually,
California Chrome seems to be the favorite,
yeah.
And frankly, I think Main Sequence, when they point this out, is going to end up maybe second ahead of Bayern. And I've said repeatedly in these discussions that the elevation to me of Main Sequence is an anti-Bayern vote. There's people that seem to be holding the Breeders' Cup Classic against Bayern, which I don't think is fair because he did have a complete season. And there's also people who clearly have it out for Baffert as well. A couple of other things that I thought were anomalies and are increasing frustrations when it comes to the Eclipse vote. and I had conversations with Jay Privman, you may have heard on Friday, in fact, the interloping of turf horses into the older male and older female category. The older male and older female, we talked about this last week, are supposed to be your main track horses, your dirt horses. And there's a category for turf female and turf male. And they don't need to be voted upon into the older male and older female category. And I guess the Eclipse people and NTRA and company need to maybe come forward with a directive to say, confine your older male, older female votes to main track horses. And I think, Seth, part of this happened with the advent of the synthetic racetrack, which took horses that were main track, quote unquote, that were really turf horses. And that has really made it, I think, kind of a mess these last 6-7 years. So that's why horses like Main Sequence and Wise Dan are pushing out horses that really belong in the older male and the older female category. The other one that I thought was, a couple of little nuances. Latia, you and I both agreed on Latia. She ends up not being a finalist in the turf category for females. Crown Queen? Excuse me? She beat a really suspect group in the Queen Elizabeth, and she won the Lake Placid in a 4-horse field that were separated by a length. How is she elevated into a finalist position in the turf female category? I didn't get it. Victor Espinoza. Victor Espinoza had a lot more nice horses, including Hootenanny and Dortmund and more, than just California Chrome last year. And he deserved to be a finalist on the jockeys. So there's some real, there's some real tough spots.
wrote about that, about Espinoza, who he said will be able to sit in the audience as they hand out the awards going, that was my horse, that was my horse.
Exactly. I didn't get that.
And let me ask you one thing. I'll ask your opinion on it. Brian Nadeau and I talked about it the other day after these came out. The male turf horse category, Kara Conti is in there. And we talked about it, and I agreed. I want two races in North America. I think that's fair because I think it's a North American award. And I think you can come over here first off the plane and have a fluky. Now that said, he doesn't stand a chance this year. It's going to be Main Sequence. Yeah. But I think there are other years where these horses do. And I wish they'd put that rule in.
It's a funny subject because there have been plenty of one-start turf, in particular, runners that have come over for Breeders' Cup. Nobody would begrudge Goldakova, and nobody begrudged Ouija Board, because for some reason they were over and above, just the one-start conversation. And Caraconti, just because he went off at 30-1 and was overlooked in the wagering, it's not as if he was a fluky winner. I mean, if he had been in the 4-hole or the 6-hole, he wouldn't have been 30-1 in the mile. I mean, that just wouldn't have happened. So I voted for Kagan, but as I said last week, I'm looking for a horse that just deserves a certain honorarium, as it were, in that spot. It's a funny topic. A lot of people are very comfortable voting for those one-shot winners.
I mean, I've said it years before. This was the first year I had a chance to vote, but that just didn't hit my radar when I vote. But I've said it even before that. I wish they had a rule at least a couple of times. Some other news, really over the past, what was this, just the 24 hours or so, which I found very surprising. Atlantic City Racecourse will close. And essentially immediately, it's like a week down the road, they're going to close. And I hadn't seen it. I guess New Jersey hadn't put a schedule together for 2015 because usually they have that 5 days of turf.
No, dates were approved.
It was? So
dates were approved.
Oh, okay. So
dates were approved. Greenwood, let's dispense with the formalities. And I'm not going to say that I know exactly the financials of what's been going on in terms of Atlantic City Racecourse and the revenue being generated for it and by it as an OTB facility, which is essentially what it's been. Yeah. And then there is the 5 or 6 day meet that they've been running the last 10 plus years that qualifies it to be open for betting. The fact of the matter is that Greenwood as an organization, the owners of Philadelphia, are the absolute worst owners potentially among racetrack operators. They don't care an iota about the sport. And it's increasingly irksome the way they run Philadelphia Park. Yeah. They are absolutely oblivious. They have an opportunity, and they've had an opportunity for years, to lower takeout to a point where it would really make the signal attractive. They don't care. 30% takeout on multi-horse wagers. It's preposterous. Nobody bets on Philadelphia. There's also a situation at the racetrack itself, the way things are run. It's kind of an in-house club. There's so many things wrong with the way Greenwood operates. And of course, Sal Sinatra, who had been the racing director, has moved to the executive position at Maryland. And to me, part of the sub-story, and again, this only happened on Friday, so I don't know all the specifics, but with Sal Sinatra leaving Philadelphia, there's potential that his absence now allows Greenwood management to just run roughshod. Sal used to try to stand up to management and do the right thing for the horsemen and for the racing product, including keeping Atlantic City open. And so I got a feeling that Sal's departure helped precipitate this, because Sal Sinatra would have fought this. So Greenwood, you can lay this at their feet. The Atlantic City meet, the actual days of racing, has been wildly popular, with 15, 18,000 people in attendance, absolutely having a festive time when the races were run. And of course, the grass course, for years considered the best in the country, continues to be absolutely fine. So this is really unnecessary, and I don't think anybody's going to step in. Certainly Monmouth Park and Dennis Drazen and John Forbes and the company there that is running Monmouth, they've got their hands full as it is, being rebuffed with the sports betting. So I don't see Monmouth being able to step in here. So now I got a question. I don't think there's a place for people in Atlantic City to make a bet on a horse race now, because the casinos, I don't think there's any of the casinos left that have a race book. So where do people in Atlantic City vicinity go to make a bet? That's another subplot to this. It's inexcusable, and it can't possibly be truly necessary if Greenwood cared an iota about horse players and the sport.
Yeah, and this is another one of those examples, I think, of a racetrack management kind of chasing slots, and that's been out there for years and years. And there was a couple of years ago, it seemed like Atlantic City might be moving in the right direction, maybe going to a longer meet, but the chance of racetrack slots just hasn't been out there.
Sal Sinatra was ready and had wanted to make like a 2-week, 17-day meet at Atlantic City, and was rebuffed by management because they want less racing or no racing. And that's one of the problems with an organization like Greenwood. And it's a problem with certain of the casino and the gaming company operators. Some of them, like Boyd Gaming, are very good and are very proactive down in Louisiana. Boyd Gaming enjoys having the racing at Delta Downs and at Evangeline. Not everyone is that proactive and that appreciative. The Indian tribes have enjoyed. Certainly the Chickasaws down in Oklahoma, and their involvement at Remington is a cohesive scenario between the gaming and the racing. But Greenwood, and to some extent Penn National, and frankly, of late, Churchill Downs Incorporated, seem to have less and less interest or no interest in perpetuating or improving and maintaining the racing product.
Yeah, you look at parks, and as you mentioned, the take-up, but you also look at they have a nice turf course there. They potentially have a nice turf course, which they don't maintain and race over.
They don't have a watering system. They don't have a sprinkler system. It's a temporary sprinkler thing that you move around like they have in tobacco fields. That's how little Parks cares about the product. I mean, they run all summer long, and there's points where that turf course is like a paved highway. I mean, it's a joke.
And you talk about Sal Sinatra, we're already seeing his imprint making some changes over in Maryland. They've changed up. They're now going to run on Sundays instead of Thursdays, starting in February. They've changed up the wagering menu a little bit. Just before we go to the break, I do want to mention also came out with the 2014 handle figures nationally. Wagering last year went down just under 3%, but you tie that into the number of races went down over 4%, so that factored in, all tied into full crop and that type of thing, but there was a little bit of a dip. There was a major dip. It went down over 9% in December alone, but overall just under 3% handle dip in 2014.
You get a real litmus test on how certain outlets and certain individuals, who's rooting for the game and who's rooting against. Because those that report major decline in handle, they didn't necessarily include the fact that on a per race basis, in 2013, the per race wagering averaged 251,000. In 2014, the per race average was 255,000. I may be nuts, I'm not a statistician or a mathematician by trade, but that looks to be up. It's unbelievable. You got these people, the Twitter crowd celebrating the decline in handle, except technically there wasn't a decline in handle. If there's X number of races and X handle, and you divide the races by the handle, that to me would be a pretty good read on the health of the wagering, and it was up. So judge it how you want. The handle was down. Those rooting against say it was down. Those rooting for, you can find a way to show that it was up.
Again, the handle numbers coming out, and things were reflected kind of similarly. I was interested a couple days ago, they announced the handle numbers for harness, and they kind of mirrored, much less, but they were very similar as far as the percentage of decline and the number of races decline and average per race and whatnot. That was interesting. All right, we will head to our first break. When we come back, Rick Violette, we're going to talk a little New York because, of course, they've had a little controversy.
Well, it's not controversy to me. It's a situation, and we'll go and get Rick in here. The spate of horses going wrong since the start of the winter meet has created yet a new firestorm of concerns and idiotic calls for the elimination of racing in the winter and so forth. And there's things in place that have had a nice run of success in terms of what's gone on since 2012. And the task force on horse safety implemented any number of changes and protocols that have been largely positive and have had a positive effect. There's been a grouping, a spike in incidents. That's going to happen. There's going to be spikes in incidents, and then there's going to be extended periods without incident. That's going to happen. And the only way to have zero breakdowns is to stop racing, because they're going to break down and there's going to be fatalities no matter what you do. You can be running them on cotton balls. It's not going to matter. So right away, those that are anxious to ridicule and attack, they've got their agenda, and everybody else who plies the trade and who own and race and operate, they have a reasonable response to things like this. Rick Violette's going to join us next. We'll talk about yesterday's meeting with the horsemen and management and how everybody is going to try to do even better and minimize the chances for horses going wrong. Back after this.
There's nothing like the thrill and excitement of horse racing. And now, the new home for all the best racing and all the top tracks is OTB-TV on Time Warner Cable Channel 1250, delivering each day the best racing across the country and around the world, whether it's Saratoga or Belmont here in New York, Florida's Gulfstream Park, or California's Del Mar and Santa Anita race courses. No other network brings you the grandeur of horse racing like OTB-TV on Time Warner Cable Channel 1250.
aggressively.
Historical Lady Ginger Punch to win it.
And it's Wilco in front, and he's going to pull off a huge upset here.
But it's Round Pond going on to take the distaff.
Awesome again. Sire of 10 Grade 1 winners, 4 Breeders' Cup champions, and 4 multimillionaires, standing at Adena Springs.
It's more than just a sports bar. It's Stadium Cafe. Located at 389 Broadway in Saratoga, it's the place to be for great times and great food. Their menu features everything from gourmet entrees to your favorite wraps and sandwiches. Or maybe you just want to grab a beer and catch the game. So what can be better than that? How about 2 Stadium Cafes? There's also the Westside Stadium, right up the road at 112 Congress Street. Same great menu, same great service. Whether you're hanging at the bar or just relaxing outside on their spacious covered patio, you'll always leave knowing you'll be back again.
We love, above all, the staff. We love Dave Harmon, and the food is fantastic.
Not 1, but 2. 112 Congress Street, 389 Broadway. Guaranteed to be a home run.
Welcome back to Loose on the Lead on this Sunday morning. Seth Merrow and Steve Bick. We're still reaching out to Rick Violet. In the meantime, we'll take a look at some of the stakes action from yesterday and toss out some comments on that. We're also going to be joined a little later on by Herb McCauley, who was on board Thunder Rumble, that 1992 Travers Stakes. So a little memorial segment for Thunder Rumble, who passed away up at Old Friends at Cabin Creek over the past week. But first, again, some of the nice stakes action across the country yesterday. A couple of comebacks that were going to be interesting out in Southern California. We'll take a look at Calculator a little bit later on. But down in Florida, the comeback of Lee, who last year at about this time wins the House Hope and the Don Handicap for Bill Mott, and then goes to the sideline for the remainder of the year. Lee made a comeback in the House Hope yesterday. We're going to watch the entire race here. Lee is the number 1 horse, and you'll watch this one coming down the backstretch. And boy, they could put this picture of this race in for a definition of behind a wall of horses, because as they come around the far turn, you typically think, oh, some of the horses will float off the rail and something will open up. Well, it doesn't. And subsequently, the horse who winds up second in the race, Confrontation, gets the jump on Lee and makes a nice move on the outside. But Lee sits, waits, and then pulls out and makes a nice late run, having to, again, negotiate around all the traffic. I thought this was a really impressive comeback.
It was, and I know Bill Mott, if you watch Bill Mott post-race, he was very pleased considering the trouble that Lee finds himself in and the way that he extricates himself, Joel Rosario not panicking, and it just shows you, here's a 5-horse field, and we say this so often, that you get a small field, big trouble, is the old saying. And that, there it is. I mean, a perfect example. Now, of course, you go back a year, and Lee was in the exact same position. A impressive House Hope win that then gave rise to his tremendous performance in the Don Handicap. And you got to think that this sets him up for one of those runs again, and a chance to defend the Don win as well. He's going to certainly face some serious horses. Here he kicks to the outside, Rosario, and even at past the 16th pole, you think, gosh, how's he going to get there? And in the last few strides, he really starts to lengthen. Look at him here. Look at him when he gets close and starts to see the eyes of the opponent. He surges forward and wins, and actually wins comfortably at that point. So let's see if Lee can stay healthy. If he does, he certainly at the age of 6, a big opportunity for Claiborne and for Mrs. Dilschneider and for Bill Mott and company with Lee. And it's good to get him back and get him to kick off his 6-year-old season with that kind of win. Do you want to? I think we've got Rick Violet now.
Oh, very good. Yeah, let's go to Rick.
Rick Violet joins us, of course, the head of the New York Thoroughbred Horsemen's Association, and in wake of yesterday's meeting with management and with an assorted group of horsemen and other members of the NYTHA board. And Rick, obviously a spike in horses going wrong in any venue creates a certain amount of concern and consternation. When it's happening here in New York in the winter, it seems to get some added scrutiny.
Well, and not that it shouldn't. I mean, we've got to protect these horses, and when whether they're avoidable or unavoidable, you better be paying attention to this stuff. So, it's not an acceptable level, and I think everybody is in agreement on that. And what is exactly the reason? I don't think we're going to find one switch and say, okay, fix that, and everything is hunky-dory. I think, once again, we have to continue to turn everything upside down. Nobody that trains over at the racetrack at Aqueduct, and I'm one of those, think it's the racetrack itself. I breezed 17 horses over it this morning, and they're all cooled out well and back in the stalls. Now there's also there's a difference between a track in the morning and the afternoon, and they've got to take a look at that. They're going to bring Mick Peterson back in to do all his instrument testing, moisture, the density. They'll bring in his ground penetrating radar and check the base and the sub base and see if there are frost heaves or there's an unevenness, below the naked eye. And they'll redo all of that stuff. That stuff has been done. It's even though nobody really thinks that's the issue. You can't just go on that. You've got to re-examine everything. We've got to, ratchet up what the trainers are doing, and I don't think this is a time that trainers can be cavalier about anything. You've got to really look in the mirror and be very, very raise everybody's standard as to the horses and the condition you're going to lead them over. And this isn't time, like you said, to be cavalier about it. I think the jockeys have to be, very sensitive and aware of how the horses are warming up. And it is a question mark, especially now. And maybe they're not supposed to run. Take them over to the vet and save them for another day. The examining veterinarians have to ratchet. Everybody's got to jump in here and raise a standard. The stewards, I think, have to, take control of the racetrack in the afternoon. They have to hold the riders to a better standard, whether it's coming out of the gate or the herding late or on. Everybody that has that participates, the veterinarians, everybody's got to ratchet up thing because what's happening isn't acceptable, and without knowing what the answer is, the medication standards have been changed and tightened up. Third-party administrator, Lasix, all the things that we have done that we had hoped would prevent something like this. Right now, we've got to make sure we're not missing something, and I think everybody is on board and doing that.
Rick, on the topic of the various protocols that were instituted as a result of the task force study and recommendations, since 2012, there has been a series of meets at all three New York venues that basically everyone from all levels of involvement have acknowledged that those protocols have improved the general atmosphere for safety and welfare. To some extent, isn't a spike no more than a spike? And unless there happens to be fissures that are discovered on the track that hadn't been heretofore noticed, some soft spots, which does happen. Isn't this more or less a scenario, at least at face value, that no matter how vigilant everybody is, there's going to be episodes and moments where there's going to be anomalies in these kinds of statistics?
There's no question about that. And we were having a terrific year until December, and the numbers were half of the national average. But it's not like a baseball player that's having a spike in strikeouts, and things will even out by the end of the year. We're talking about life and death as far as horses and riders potentially concerned. And just riding things out isn't acceptable. There's got to be a serious level of self-examination here. I mean, and if it's a spike, it's a spike, great. And if we actually tweak something in the process because of a crisis or the spike, and that we've improved the whole standard of anything within the industry, then that's a benefit from it. But it's not, like I said, just that, a pitcher losing 5 games in a row or a batter missing the baseball by 3 feet and hoping things will even out. This is much more serious stuff, and sometimes treating it as assuming that it's a spike without making sure that it's only a bad few weeks. That gets close to being cavalier and irresponsible. And if it's overkill, and probably a bad term, but if we're going over the top in being self-critical and forcing people to raise standards, and so be it. I don't know that the attempt to raise standards is ever over the top.
Rick, I just want to reiterate, because I think it's important to do so. After that task force put out the report, there were some changes made. And really, prior to this spike, when they went to Aqueduct, the numbers in New York were very good. In fact, compared nationally, they were right up at the top.
Well, I know, and you're right, and I thank you for that. And frankly, things were working. We went from a very bad spell to being the best in the country. It was half the national average. We had a terrific run, and it seemed that changing the medication protocols, going to third-party administration of Lasix, heightening the reporting of corticosteroid injections, moving those further out from race day, all of those things, bringing in a safety steward and bringing in Dr. Palmer, all of those things seem to have had concrete results. And that's the frustration here, that those things were supposed to continue to work, and somehow we hit this bubble, and hopefully it's just a bubble or a spike. You can't assume it. You've got to go and reevaluate everything. It's just, and it's New York, it's New York. This happened in Albuquerque, and maybe it's something. It is a blip on the screen. It is in Albuquerque. It's not Louisiana, it's New York. And we don't have the latitude to assume that this will run its course and things will even out again. And hopefully that's what happens. But in the interim, we've got to make sure that the changes that we made are still in place, that the practices that were ramped up are still being run and being enforced. You have to do all of those things. Because we did make tremendous changes. The medication reform, and we've gone through this before, is significant. The raising the standards of the testing laboratories has been significant. There have been a lot of very, very good things that we went through a transformation period because of this crisis in 2012. And so there's no question there's a level of frustration is, okay, what happened? And I don't know that we'll ever be able to point a finger at one thing that happened, but you have to examine things as if you will find that one thing or two things that might make things stay safer.
Rick, there was one quote in Dave Grenig's piece on Friday that I find really troubling, and that is that the Gaming Commission wrote in their response to the situation, the Commission is extremely concerned with the unacceptable number of incidents at Aqueduct. Well, unacceptable meaning what? What's acceptable? If there were 2 a month, and if we were operating on the average of 2 per 1,000, which is industry-wide, is that acceptable? I mean, how bad, to me, of a precedent or of an atmosphere does this create when people want to put it in those terms? Because there's got to be some acceptance of the reality that horses go wrong and are going to die. And if we're going to get into this arena that zero tolerance is the level that it has to be reached, we're in trouble as a sport, because that's never going to happen.
Well, and that's a given, but the attempt again, and it's semantics. I don't usually get upset about one-liners and quotes and everything. People have jobs to do, and there's a way they have to phrase things and whatnot. And it just, they're really, they're slices of time. Listen, the goal has to be 0 fatalities. We know we're never going to get there. If you turn a bunch of horses out in the field, things happen. But again, you can't treat it as that's all we're doing. We're going to pull them out and let them fend for themselves. They're not fending for themselves. We're responsible for them. So, select quotes and words. Sometimes things come out differently. Select word selections and all that. There are too many things for me to get upset about and worry about. We have long conversations with the same individuals. They're well-meant, intelligent people, and this is because in the short they are unacceptable. If that trend were to continue, it's flat out way unacceptable. So it depends on what time frame you're looking at and everything. And and getting I don't get exercise. I don't think it's fruitful sometimes getting exercise out of a quote or a sentence or whatever. Let's focus on everybody. We're all in this. We're already into the bus. We got to figure out how to get out from under and move forward. So we just take a deep breath and move on.
And that sounds like the game plan coming out of that meeting yesterday are moving forward. There will be some examination consultants brought in and whatnot, so we hope for the best there. But let's change the subject because it's that time of year. Before we let you go, a happier topic. It's 3-year-old season Derby Trail. Give us a little update on Upstart.
He's doing terrific. I'm trying to make the Holy Bull, and I'm on a razor-fine schedule. I have room for a couple more races, and things need to go extremely well for me to make the Holy Bull. I'd love to get a race in down there, and the Withers would probably be the backup. And while things kind of worked with Samrat, coming back and forth all winter, last winter, I'm not sure that I want to do that every year type of deal. So if I can make the Holy Bull and get a first race in, that would be terrific. He's a really nice horse. We gave him 4 weeks off, and it shows. He matured a little bit, got a little thicker. He's loving what he's doing, and I think he's the real deal.
Very good. Rick, we absolutely appreciate the visit. We'll let you go. But again, hopefully things will move in the right direction down in New York. As I say, before things at Aqueduct, things were going very, very well down there. So we have a little bit of an aberration. You guys are going to address it as we saw through that meeting yesterday. But again, thanks for the visit, and good luck going forward with Upstart.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very, very much. Take care.
Thanks,
right.
Rick.
Violet.
Bye.
And why don't we hit on these races again
here.
before the next break, and then we'll take the break and make connection with Herb McCauley. But going back down to Florida on their stakes card yesterday, we're on the grass, the Marshalls River Grade 3 event for fillies and mares going a mile and a 16th, and it will be the 6-5 favorite Paranda getting it done here under John Velasquez. A little bit of an upsetter in both of the spots underneath. Number 1, Skylander at 20-1. Number 2, Y Catherine at 19-1, combining for what, a dollar triple at 205. But the 6-5 favorite Paranda gets it done in the Marshalls River.
Well, and there's a nice story here with Paranda, who, of course, was on the East Coast, then went out to Jerry Hollendorfer and was very productive. Now, through the ring in November and purchased by the China Horse Club, which, of course, is an international concern that has invaded North America. And they're very welcome because they love the game, and it's great to have China Horse Club. And they start the year off with Chris Clement and Paranda in this spot. Then, of course, we look at the other stake, the Fort Lauderdale, which was similar, the mile and a 16th. This one for the Colts and Geldings. And here was Chris Clement losing a horse. Za Approval has been moved to Mark Casse. Look on the outside in the white jacket and the black dots and red cap of Charlotte Weber, being floated out by notorious herder Javier Castellano. Nobody does it better at pushing horses wide than Javier. He has taken over from from Kent DeSormo. This is Mishawish. Grand Tito, who I liked and who I keyed off of, ran a very good bang-up second in here under Lascano. But Mishawish gets his first North American graded stake win for Todd Pletcher and for Al Shakab Racing. And
for what I read, the approval thing was they want to get him out in Southern California.
It was a very strange. It's a very strange decision. He wants firm turf. The turf's not firm enough at Gulfstream?
Gulfstream, yeah.
Really?
And I'll also toss in, speaking of Mrs. Weber, she had a nice winner yesterday at Laurel, Super Lucky, who they're going to head to stakes race with next time, perhaps. All right, let's head out to Southern California and take a look at the Sham. The interesting horse there, obviously, was Calculator, who had finished second in a couple of starts behind American Pharoah. Hadn't been seen since the front runner, the same race that was the last race for American Pharoah. So it was a little bit of a layoff since the end of September. Number 7, Calculator, gets it done as the 3-5 favorite. Does it pretty easily.
Well, and we only see the stretch run more or less. If you go back and watch the full replay, you'll see he is 4 wide into the first turn and is well wide every single step of the way. He didn't really beat anybody. The rest of this group is pretty ordinary. However, this was very stylish, a 97 buyer for Peter Miller and for this Richard Pell, very nice, in summation, colt. And this was an encouraging performance, undoubtedly, and it only further enhances what looks like a terrific 3-year-old crop in California. Santa Anita, Rick Hammerly and company got to be pretty excited about having the likes of American Pharoah, who some people feel is a little iffy. We'll see when he gets back to the races, but you still have got Dortmund, of course, and Texas Red is working down with DeSormo in Fairgrounds, but you've got some very nice 3-year-olds in the making for the road to the Santa Anita Derby. And Peter Miller, happened to exchange texts with Peter this morning, like at 5:30 Eastern or California time, and he was very happy and everything A-OK with Calculator coming out of here. The other stake, of course, Bayern in the San Pascal, and everybody, not Bayern, Opportunity in the San Pascal. We'll watch that, and Opportunity saving ground every step of the way. You'll see him down inside, see him in the familiar red and yellow jacket, being urged there by Martin Garcia, and once he finds the lead, he powers down the lane and wins clear. Good performance and clever ride by Martin Garcia, not panicking and trying to go wide. And Opportunity follows up his Clark win at the end of last year with a 4-year-old debut that looked awfully stylish in the San Pascal. 94 buyer for his first start as an older horse.
And again, it's early, but it looks like last year. It looks like that older division is going to be a lot of fun. We'll keep our fingers crossed that it holds together. But the 3-year-olds who were so impressive at the end of last year are now becoming 4-year-olds and adding a lot to it, and it's going to be fun. You mentioned at the top of the show before we went on the air, and I will toss this in there, the comeback yesterday, Commissioner runs disappointing third.
Oh, it wasn't disappointing.
3-5 favorite.
Wasn't disappointing.
Oh, he was close up.
No,
but
he ran really well.
It's disappointing if you're better, no matter how you look at it. At 3-5, you run third.
Yeah, why anybody would take him at 3-5, I don't know. But in terms of
he was right there. It was a photo finish.
And stylistically, he was up on the lead. It really wasn't what he does best, and it's really not his
mid-race
stick.
He took over.
Exactly, and he was involved in the race from the get-go, and basically just gets headed in the final couple of strides by horses. He was in a serious pace battle the entire way, and then just gets corralled late by horses that were, including Ulan Bator, the Nicene Wilkes. But I thought Commissioner ran very well in here.
Yeah, I agree. It's disappointing from a betting standpoint, but you're right. It was a photo finish. And that was we're talking a layoff from the Belmont Stakes. So
exactly, and this is not his. He wants longer. Don't forget, he wants 1 1/8 and beyond. We're going to take our break here. When we come back, it's going to be a real treat to check in with Herbie McCauley, even under the circumstances, because of course Thunder Rumble passed this week. Kind of out of nowhere. He had been fine, and Colic this week also claimed Wildcat Air, the very nice Perkins New Farm sire, had won the De Francis Dash as a racehorse, and then overperformed as a sire. Thunder Rumble underperformed as a sire, but he was terrific on the racecourse. And of course, the late Richie O'Connell and everything that those memories will entail. Herb McCauley joins us. We've also got to talk to Herb about Ronnie Warren, who died this week as well. And Ronnie Warren, a trainer not as well known on the East Coast, but the trainer of Coax Me Chad, who Herb was second on in the Derby back in 80-something. And Ronnie Warren died this week as well. Herb McCauley joins us next to remember Thunder Rumble and more. Loose on the Lead continues here on Capital OTB.
I'm Michael Chamberlain of Turf Paradise. Now you can catch the action at Turf Paradise and all your favorite tracks on OTB TV at their new home, Digital Channel 8.2. You can also find them on Time Warner Channel 1250 and FiOS Channel 467.
I don't know. You hang around here. What do you think?
Fascinated by the world of horse racing? Interested in honing your handicapping skills? Class is in session. Night school, Monday nights. Easy to access online. It's free, interactive, and informative for the casual and serious race fan. Horse Player Now Buzz. Live horses to watch emailed to you daily. Our eyes, your prize. Night School in the Buzz. Visit horseplayernow.com for details.
I didn't want to get just any degree after high school.
Horse racing has always been my passion.
I was already a lawyer.
When I was young, my dad took me to the races. The sound of the crowd. I still remember.
I'm 40, and I don't want to stay in a career I don't love.
I want to follow my passion.
Follow your passion at the University of Arizona Racetrack Industry Program.
Missed one of our TV shows? No worries. Now you can catch all your favorite programs online. Simply log on to CapitalOTB.com and click on the YouTube link at the bottom of the homepage. And look for our new podcast coming soon. CapitalOTB.com. Log on today.
I'm Tony Kalo of Finger Lakes Gaming and Racetrack. Now you can catch the action at Finger Lakes and all your favorite tracks on OTB TV at their new home, Digital Channel 8.2. You can also find them at Time Warner 1250 and FiOS Channel 467.
We're back on Loose on the Lead on this Sunday morning, and even under the circumstances where we're going to remember a horse that passed this week, a human as well, and somebody that's been gone for too long, that was taken from us early, in Richie O'Connell. It's still great to be able to welcome Herb McCauley to the show. Herbie, good morning.
Good morning to you, Steve. It's nice to hear from you.
I'm just looking at a picture of you, and you're wearing Mrs. Weber's silks, and that might be Solar Splendor, but we've got to talk about Thunder Rumble first and foremost, the New York bred that upset the Jim Dandy and then the Travers back in '92, and what a year it was for you, and what a horse he was.
He was an exceptional horse. Not a lot of people believed in him at the time. He was a New York bred. Richie O'Connell, who trained him, he was kind of a rogue in the morning where he was tough to gallop. He always hung out on the outside fence. He didn't want to make the turns and stuff. And Steve Placeres, who was at the time was not training, I started him off as an agent, and he told me, he says, listen, I got this horse Thunder Rumble, and he says he wants to comb the outside fence in the morning. He says, you want to ride him? I said, well, the only thing I know what to do is drop his head and let him roll on the fence, and if he can do that, we'll see who he becomes. And he turned out to be one heck of a horse. And actually, he was going to be one of the favorites in the Wood Memorial. And I rode Devil is Due that year. That was 1992. I rode Devil is Due and dead heated with Lure and that Dawson stake. And I came up to the decision of which horse I was going to ride, Lure or Devil is Due. Thunder Rumble or Lure, who dead heated with. And I said, I'm going to ride Thunder Rumble. And he got a temperature, and he got sick. He was out. And I guess it was
meant to be because in the Cahill Stakes, the race before the Wood Memorial, I went down and broke my collarbone and my shoulder, so I'd have been out for both of them. And it turned out they brought him back at Saratoga, and I'm working one morning at Saratoga, and unbelievable workout. It had been more like a Bob Baffert workout out in California, where he went 3/4 of a mile in 10 and 2. And upon that, they said, we're going for the Jim Dandy. I said, let him roll. I said, he is. I've never seen a racehorse on top of his game better than this.
Herb,
and sure enough, he came out and he won the Jim Dandy and paid, I think, $34 that day.
More.
And after that, he kept on training. And the happiest person in the world might have been the valet Parker that parked my car for the jockeys at the time. Well, he parked it for the owners, but he parked my car, and he got the horse, and he bet on the horse not only Jim Dandy, but he bet on him in the Travers, and he won like a champ.
Herb, we were watching, as you were talking about him and his development as a 3-year-old, we were watching the Travers. He was so strong in here, and I had John Morrison on the radio earlier this week, and of course, John was Richie's assistant at the time. He told the story, you couldn't work Thunder Rumble between the Jim Dandy and the Travers, and Richie reached out for Margie Cordero because he didn't want any other jock that might have had a mount in the Travers to get on his back because he was worried that it might affect how they rode against him. And Margie gave him a perfect workout, apparently, and then you just march right down the 4-path. He was so much the best in this Travers. It is. We're watching the stretch run again here. He's just in a canter down the stretch.
It was funny because I was always, I guess, considered one of the most aggressive riders, and I loved to stay in the pocket, and I didn't like to go wide. And with him, when I turned him loose, he was just covering so much ground. That was, if I stopped him, I felt like I was stopping a freight train, so I just gave him his open ground and all the air that he wanted. So I was in the 4-path, and it's like I was taught when by great Donnie Brumfield and Ray Broussard and people like that, Walter Blum. You don't go around 3 and you don't come through on 1. Well, I had so much horse, I went in the 4-path.
Herb, I know John Morrison talked this week about the fact that Richie was very unhappy with that draw. He got the 10-hole, and that was a cause for concern for Richie.
It turned out to be a godsend to me because it was the 10-hole was my son. He was 10 months old by the day, and it was the 10th of, I think it was the 10th of August that the Travers was running that day too. So it was everything was like 10-10.
And Herb, I'm just looking here. You remember it so vividly, but I'm just looking. It's the Travers. It's a Grade 1 race up at Saratoga, but I'm also looking. 1992. This was $1 million race.
That was the first $1 million race. It was one of those, I guess, part of a jockey's career where you couldn't. Things were just unfolding for me. First time they hung $1 million up for the Travers. The first time they hung $1 million up for the Super Derby. And I got that with Linda, but we're on the subject of Thunder Rumble, but I nailed the first $2 million races like that.
And Herb, 92 was a terrific year, and I'm sure that, here was the Travers a couple of weeks after the Alabama where you just got nailed. You were having a great year on Saratoga Dew for Gary Siaka, of course, and just got beaten the Alabama. So to come back and win the Travers, that had to be pretty good itself.
It was a great thing. Actually, my former wife, I had a bet with her. She sat there and said if I won 5 stakes within a week's time that I could, I guess it was a week and a half if you count the weekend, that I could buy myself a Porsche. Well, getting beat a nose in the Alabama cost me the Porsche, but the Travers got the icing on the cake. So I didn't get my Porsche until I got divorced, but I definitely I enjoyed winning the Travers.
That is tremendous. And just to give everybody an idea of how great a year 92 was, how about the likes of these horses? Thunder Rumble, Solar Splenda, Saratoga Dew, Devil is Due, Walenda, Missy Moo, I Love You. I mean, you had a year that is just incredible.
It was one of the funniest years that I've ever had. I rode the least amount of horses, and I think my horses earned at the time over $5 million, and it was just like I don't know. I was far from a prima donna, but it was like I had choice horses to ride, and I couldn't be more blessed by the owners and the outfits that I rode for, and it just turned out. I think I had plenty of grace that year. I ended up Laugh and Be Merry with Angel Penna. We won the Eclipse Award that year. Saratoga Dew got the Eclipse Award that year, so it was fun. But on the other hand, we're talking about people that we lost, and it was Richard O'Connell who had, like I said, Capace and Thunder Rumble that year, and then this week you said Ronnie Warren, that we lost him, and he was a character within himself. I mean, he definitely, if somebody could write a book about him, he was something else. He did everything that he could with the racehorse, and he did it I guess in a fashion that not a lot of people on the racetrack really consented to, but he got his horses to run, and Coach McCad, like I said, I thought that I could win I thought I'd win the Jim Beam, and I wheeled him out at the 8th pole, and I said he would win by 4 or 5, and he just put on the brakes, and I got off, and Elmer Miller that owned him, he comes up to me and he says, Herbie, he says, we got a chance in the Derby, and I told him, I said, you give me 10,000. I said, I'll ride him in the Derby, and if he doesn't finish 1, 2, 3, I give you 10,000 back. And he says, why is that? I said, I figured something out today. And he says, what's that? I said, the horse loves the fence. All he wants to do is be on the rail. So we drew in the Derby, one of the biggest Derby fields, and I think it was the auxiliary gate out there. Ended up being 22 horses, I think, that year. And I dropped back to dead last, and I put him on the fence, and he loped around on the fence. I went around one horse in the turn, and I run up the swell at the 8th pole, and then Pink Eye looked back at me, and when he did, he went to crack swell, and that was it. So I thought I was going to win my first Derby and only Derby, and instead I had to settle for second, but he was well trained by Ronnie Warren.
Well, and of course, everybody in New York, Ronnie Warren, a Kentucky guy, but for New Yorkers, everyone knows what kind of a horseman, natural horseman, Richie O'Connell was, and could not resist a chance, Herb, to catch up with you. Watch out for those dogs, by the way. Keep.
Yeah, how about that? I mean, it's bad enough I've been around horses since riding them since I was 4 years old, and the first time, I mean, I've been bit by a horse once or twice. I mean, you can't be around a horse that long in your life and not be fit. But I have a dog bite me. That was the first.
Herb, looking forward to seeing you down in Florida in a few weeks. Thank you so much for this.
All right, you guys, and Steve, thank you so much, and keep doing well with your program, and here's the Sirius Radio. Have a great Sunday.
Herb McCauley, everybody, who really had a tremendous career. Until you go back and look at the horses Herb rode, you forget what a terrific career he had.
Yeah, it was funny. It wasn't until I looked down and remembered that was the first year it was worth $1 million. So no wonder it's a vivid memory. Herb McCauley, a little earlier, Rick Violette, the head of New York Thoroughbred Horsemen's Association, talking a little bit about the situation down at Aqueduct, all of which wraps up Loose on the Lead for this Sunday morning. Don't forget, if you have questions, comments, or suggestions, we would love to hear from you. LooseOnTheLead@yahoo.com. LooseOnTheLead@yahoo.com. Seth Merrow, Equidaily.com. Steve Bick from Sirius and XM's At the Races. And we were talking before the show, it's out of town?
Not the week after. The week after. I'll be out in Vegas for the National Handicapping Championship, and we'll be rooting for some of the Capital District and Capital OTB participants that will be in Vegas. Looking forward to that. We'll be broadcasting, looks like Thursday, Friday, and Monday from Vegas, and we might even be able to do some broadcasting Saturday and Sunday on SiriusXM for the NHC, and then it looks like a little California for the San Antonio and the Bob Lewis, and then down to Florida for that action, the Don and actually I'll miss the Don. It'll be the following week or 2 weeks later for the Fountain of Youth.
All right, I'm envious, but we'll get you by phone. We'll get we'll live vicariously through you with those. But you'll be here next week.
I think so.
All right.
Yeah, consider.
Hey,
Maybe put a tie back on, too.
Don't commit or anything. All right, I'm going to wrap things up for this edition of Loose on the Lead. We're here every Sunday morning from 10 until 11 a.m. Enjoy the races this afternoon. We'll see you next week.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off Track Betting.